Good afternoon, everyone. Very important topic we are studying today is man in the middle attack. If you remember, we have actually looked at this scenario in the first unit, where there's a person who is trying to intercept between the messages. Let's say Bob wants to talk to Alice. So there is one person in the middle who is actively or passively listening to the messages. Okay, so there are a couple of things like if this person is passively listening to the conversation, then these guys won't be uh, understanding what's happening, neither she or neither him. Uh, but if it is actively doing something, then there might be some detection, possible detection. Okay, so man in the middle attack with active attack. Okay, so let us see what is the scenario here. So let's say Alice and Bob are communicating with each other. Now, yesterday we have seen, not just yesterday, in last couple of lectures, we have seen the Diffie-Hellman key exchange. Okay, so let us try to have a look at the problem that Diffie-Hellman has. Now, both of these guys will have their own set of private key and public key. Okay, let's say it has small a and capital A. Okay, and Bob also has small b and capital B. Okay, so KPR of Bob, sorry, K public of Bob. Right. Now, how do you calculate A? That is, you take alpha and raise it to A. Okay. Now, I'm not writing the mod operation here because there are plenty of other terminologies which I'm going to write. So just assume that when I write alpha raised to A, it means that the mod operation is already involved in that. Okay, so similarly, B also will be calculated as alpha raised to the private key of Bob. Right. Now, what happens is, what Alice does is she sends this A over the internet, so that this is reached at the Bob's end, and Bob can work on the public key. Similarly, we are talking about the normal case. Okay, whatever we have seen up till now. So Bob also sends his public key over the internet so that when it reaches here. Now let us assume that this B has reached at this Alice reaches this one. So what Alice does is it calculates KAB, that is the session key. Okay, how do you calculate that? Whatever you have received from Bob, raised to your own private key. Okay, now again, I'm not writing a mod operation here. Okay, similarly, same thing, KAB will be calculated by Bob, and it will be calculated as received public key from Alice raised to its own private key. Okay, so this is what this normal scenario is. But now we are talking about the attack. What kind of attack can happen in this scenario? So let us say there is a guy, Oscar guy, okay, who is in the middle of these two. Now, what this guy can do to these A and B, we'll have a look. Now what happens is Oscar can read this public key because it's a public key. Okay, A is a public key. So Oscar can read it. Okay, what it does is it creates its own alpha raised to O. Okay, so O is the private key of Oscar. Okay, so it is changing the public key of Alice. Okay, let us name it as O1. Okay, there are two private keys that Oscar will use, one for Alice, one for Bob. Okay, we'll try to see how it can be used. Now we'll call this as A tilde. Okay, now this A tilde is sent over the internet to Bob. So Bob receives this A tilde, but Bob doesn't know that this is a changed public key. He believes that this key is just like A. Okay, it has received from Alice, right? And once it reaches Bob, what Bob does is, now this is not valid. This will not happen. Okay, what will happen? It will calculate KAB with A tilde raised to B. Okay, so that means what you are doing is alpha raised to O1 raised to B. Okay, so that you are calculating and you are assuming that that is the session key you are generating. Okay, which is not this one. Okay, so what you can do with this, we'll have a look at. Similarly, when Oscar reads this B, capital B, what it does, it changes that with another private key, alpha raised to O2. Okay, and sends this changed B to Alice. Okay, now obviously this will not happen. What will happen is KAB is calculated as the tilde B tilde raised to A's private key. Okay, so what you are actually doing, alpha raised to O2 raised to A. Okay, so these two keys are calculated, but definitely these two keys are not same. Okay, now which keys are same? Oscar also calculate the two different keys, that is, one is with this one and other one is this one with this one. So with this one, what it does is it calculates KAO, okay, which is A tilde raised to O2. Okay, and it also calculates KBO, okay, which is B tilde raised to O1. Okay, so actually what you are doing here is you are not calculating KAB at Alice, you are actually calculating KAO here. Okay, and here you are not calculating KAB, you are calculating KBO. Okay, so whatever you are getting here, it is exactly same here, and this one is same as this one. Okay, so now there are two communications which are happening. One communication with similar key here, okay, and other communication which is happening here. Okay, so these are the keys calculations which are happening when there is some other man in the middle. Okay, now let us assume that you are using some let's say AES key, I'm sorry, algorithm for calculating the or encrypting. So original message is X that Alice wants to send it to Bob. Okay, now what Alice does, it uses some AES encryption using which key is calculated by Alice is this one, KAO. Okay, so it will use KAO. Okay, now when it reaches to Oscar, what Oscar does, using the same, he knows AES, he knows the KAO. Okay, what it does, it decrypts the cipher. Okay, and it calculates X because it knows KAO, because it is generated by him itself. Okay, and it has, you know, a read complete message. Okay, and after reading it, it again encrypts the message. Okay, using other key. Which key will be used here? KBO on X. It will prepare some Y. Okay, now in this case, Y will be different than this Y because the keys are different. Okay, so we'll call it as Y dash. And when this Y dash reaches at Bob, okay, what Bob does, it uses decryption using which key? This key, KBO. Okay, and then it actually calculates X. Okay, now here, when Alice and Bob, you know, maybe after some time they communicate with each other in some other way and confirms whether have you received this X message. He confirms that yes, whatever you have sent, I have received. Now, can you tell me, is this a passive attack or active attack? Whatever we have discussed. Is the message changed in the process?
So if you're sending an encrypted text, then the message will be changed, but the original will still be same.
Yeah, Srija, can you please repeat? I couldn't hear you.
Sir, I said that because you're encrypting and sending a message, then wouldn't the message would change mostly.
Okay. So we are only changing the keys here, okay, but not changing the original message. Okay, so this Bob, sorry, Oscar is just reading the message, but not changing the message. Okay, so in this case, Alice and Bob will never come to know that there is something wrong has happened. Okay, but consider that Bob is a bank. Okay, and Alice has requested that, you know, transfer some thousand amount to some person or to, let's say, Oscar. Okay, so in that case, what Oscar can do here is it can change this X by adding some more amount. Okay, and in that case, when bank receives this message that transfer this amount to Oscar's account, then obviously bank will come to know that this is the message received from Alice, so just uh, take the action. Okay, so in that case, when Oscar is changing the message, okay, in that case will call this as x tilde. Okay, this will become an active attack. Okay, so there are two types of attacks when you are talking about MITM, that is man in the middle attack. One is passive and one is active. So in passive, the original message is not changed, and in active message, in active attack, there is a message change which happens. Okay, so whatever is we have discussed here. Okay, so for the Alice and Bob communication, Oscar has the complete control. Whenever you have when you have KAO and KBO with you, okay, Oscar has these two keys which are which are used by Alice and which are used by Bob. So you have a full control over the communication. Like Oscar has full control over communication, right? So what do you think? How do you uh, stop this attack from happening? What is wrong which is happening? First of all, tell me if you have understood this. Maybe there are many terms which are put on a paper, but have you understood how Oscar is taking a full control over the communication?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now the second question is, how do we stop Oscar? Okay, now this is a problem of Diffie-Hellman. Okay, this is a public key uh, infrastructure which is used for the key exchange. Okay, so your Diffie-Hellman, which was secure, uh, is on a stake now. How do you stop Oscar from doing all these things? You'll have to remember this term. What is this term?
Confidentiality,
Correct.
integrity, and
Confidentiality,
authenticity.
integrity, and authentication. So which is compromised here? The confidentiality is compromised because now if Oscar is reading the original message X, then it is compromised. That means it's not confidential anymore. Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there is some problem. Can you just hold on? The screen has gone blank. Okay, sorry. Right. So confidentiality is not achieved. Integrity is also not achieved because the message is getting changed in the active attack. Okay. So what can you do to stop Oscar from doing all this? Any idea? So you have to use uh, the ID along with the public key. The ID has to be authenticated. Unless and until there is a authentication, what you are not doing here, when the public key is reached at Bob is not checking whether this is actual public key of Alice. Okay, there is no one telling Bob whether this public key is actually Alice's public or her public key, right? So the authentication is not happening. Let's say you are sending the secure authentication on the along with the public key. Okay, that also can be modified, or let's say this is ID A. Okay, what Oscar can do, you can it can change this ID, uh, you know, by saying it as it's is Alice's ID, but actually using its own ID. Okay, it can happen that. Okay, so along with if you are even if you are sending some authentication, that will also not work, right? So the identification, that is authentication, also will not work. Other solution is the digital signature, that whatever we have seen up till now, digital signature. Now if let's say you are attaching the digital signature with uh, the public key, okay, and if Bob has the digital signature, uh, Bob has the Alice's digital signature, because it has to be verified, right? Because digital signature, wherever you are using, there is a verification function. Okay, so it has to be verified, right? And even if Oscar is actually changing the digital signature or using its own digital signature or doing something with this verification function, that will also not work properly. Okay, so you have to take the help of digital signature, but along with the digital signature, you have to use the digital certificates. Okay, now here is the new concept. I think, or you might have heard about this certificates term. Okay, uh, and that helps to avoid all this man in the middle attack scenario. Okay, this attack is the most powerful attack on the internet, where the messages can be uh, tampered or listen to the original message and all these things. So show you some of the digital certificates. Where can you see those digital certificates? So let's, so on your browser, in the settings, there are plenty of digital certificates you have already downloaded. Uh, so let me just go through one of it. There are thousands and millions of digital certificates. Yeah, Amazon is a good example. So I have accessed obviously Amazon website. Okay, so what is the digital certificate that I'm getting from Amazon? So this is what the subject name, who has issued the certificate, what is the validity. It was not valid before this date, and it will not be valid after this date, 2038. Okay. uh, the digital certificate has used RSA of key size, this one, and there are many other terms. Okay. It has also used SHA for the digital signature and all these things. So these are all the what you can say, uh, parameters which are defined in the certificate. Okay. And this will help identifying who has sent uh, the public key and all these things. So basically, when I'm accessing Amazon website, I'm logging into Amazon website, so I'm trusting that website. That's where I'm getting Amazon's public key. Okay. And when I'm how can I trust Amazon's public key? As soon as I access the Amazon website, that there is a digital certificate which is issued by the authority, the US authority, whatever the certificate. So that has to be verified at my end and all these things. So let me give you the process of how these digital certificates are established. So there has to be a CA, certifying authority. Okay. This is a central authority which is, what you can say is, it is a trusted authority, or I also have discussed this as a trusted third party. Okay. So these are the terms which are interchangeably used, right? uh, so this certifying authority, what it does is, let's say there are three guys now, Oscar and Bob. Okay. There has to be a certificate of Alice that has to be calculated. Okay. How will it be calculated? As it will take the public key of Alice. Okay. And the identification of Alice. Okay. So this is the one parameter that is needed, or actually two parameters. Okay. What it will do, it will add the signature. I'll call it as sig function. Okay. What it does, it takes these two arguments again. Okay. So whatever the data you are certifying, you are creating a signature for the same. Okay. But you are using which key for creating a signature is private key of CA. Okay. You are using a private key of CA for obtaining this signature. Okay. So whatever the certificate you have got from the CA, okay, is actually authenticated by the CA only and no one else, because you are using the private key of that particular CA. Okay. So now when this certificate reaches at Oscar, what Oscar can do to this certificate? That is one question. Okay. Uh, let us try to see the normal scenario here. This certificate is reached at Bob's end. Okay. Now what Bob does is, it has it should have a verification function. Okay. What verification it has to do is a certificate. Okay. And it should give you either true or false. Okay. In the normal scenario, it should give you the true result, right? Now for this checking or verifying, which key has to be used for checking this certificate or checking this digital signature? Can someone please give a thought on this? Let us say you want to verify the signature of this key, public key which you have received, and the identification that you have received. Okay, which key has to be used for verification? See, this is a very important concept. If you're not understanding this concept, please let me know. I thought we might discuss many things, but for verification of this signature, you have to use public key of CA. Okay, because this signature was created by CA, okay, using its own private key. Okay, no one else can sign this apart from CA. Okay, so whoever is verifying, let's say this is Amazon's signature. Okay, and the certificate that we have just seen is the Amazon certificate. Okay, which is issued by this certificate authority. Now, when I am downloading this certificate on my machine, okay, for accessing the website, I have to verify this certificate. Now, if I want to verify, I'll again go to CA, certifying authority, will ask its public key for verification and decrypt this signature to check whether the public key and whatever the identification I have received, whether it is correct one or not. Okay, and it will be given by public. And once it is checked, and once it is it gives me a true result, then and then only I go and access the website using my login credential on Amazon. Okay, this is a normal process. Now, if we are talking about the man in the middle attack with Oscar in the middle, what Oscar can do to this kind of normal situation, that is one question. So let us try to understand what Oscar can change. Can Oscar change public key A? Yes, it can change because it is available publicly. Is this encrypted? This is not encrypted, so it can change this one. But can Oscar create this signature? If Oscar wants to create a signature, Oscar will have to use its own private key, okay, which is not the private key of CA. Okay, let us assume that it creates the signature with, let us assume that the Oscar wants to use this similar situation where it is using the one key for Alice communication, another key for Oscar communication, and wants to take the full control. So let us try to see if the signature is created using KPR of Oscar. Okay, so kpub A and ID of A. Okay, if you are getting this signature, okay, and sending it over Bob, what Bob does, it is verifying this signature. For verifying this signature, what it does is it again go back to CA for asking this public key. Okay, And in that case, this signature will not be verified. You are getting the false outcome. Okay, because this whoever is the issuer, the certifying authority, it is a central authority, which is a trusted authority, and that cannot be changed. Even if you are changing the signature, it will be caught up immediately by this verification function. If you have any doubts, please do ask me. We have seen the two scenarios here, man in the middle attack, and how does the attacker, Oscar, takes the full control of the communication. And we have seen the solution also for the man in the middle. So if you have any doubts, we can discuss, or we can stop.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I wanted to like ask, while verifying, why are we using a public key? Why can't we use a private key to verify?
To verify, you want to use private key instead of public key.
Yes, sir.
Private key of CA.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If I want to use it, like, can I use it, or should I? It has to be like public key only.
See, there are two different scenarios. If you remember the lab that we have conducted for digital signature, the lab says that there are two keys. One is the public key and other one is the private key. Okay. So for RSA, if you are using a public key for encryption, you have to use a private key for decryption. Okay, so there is one scenario where you are using a public key for encryption and private key for decryption. What is the another scenario? You're using public key for decryption and private key for encryption. Okay, now which one is to use for what purpose? Okay, that is one question. So one case gives you the integrity, and other case gives you the authenticity or authentication. Okay, when you are encrypting with a private key, okay, when you are encrypting any data with a private key, you can achieve authentication. And when you are encrypting with a public key, that means what, anyone can encrypt the data, because public key is available for anyone, everyone. So, and anyone can encrypt the data. That means you are not worried about who is encrypting the data. That means you are not worried about the authentication. Okay, you are worried about the data integrity. Only that person can decrypt the data. That means you are worried about the data, and you are actually getting hold of integrity. Okay, now here in this case, who is encrypting the data? The certifying authority, CA, is encrypting the data, and it is using its own private key for encrypting the data. Okay, that means this case. Okay, now in this case, can someone else encrypt the data if private keys used here? Private key is only available with CA only, right? No one else can sign this certificate. So This way you are actually achieving the authenticity or authentication. And here the problem was Bob was not authenticating whatever you have received. Okay, the public key or whatever. Bob did not authenticate whether it is a correct public key. And that problem we are trying to solve here. And when you want to achieve the authentication, it has to be encrypted using a private key. And when you are encrypting using private key, you have to decrypt. The verification function uses a decrypt function, and it has to be used using a public key only, because the other pair, that is private key, is used for the encryption.
So, sir, because we want to maintain the authenticity of the certificates, we are using a private key for encryption and public key for decryption.
Correct, exactly.
Understood, sir.
Okay, yeah. Any other question? Just take 1 minute and you can think of any